especially for you guys.
It's a good advertisement, though. So
it's a good advertisement. Yeah, I got it on
absolutely.
Amazon, by the way. I got it on Amazon.
I
So it
told
wasn't
you,
free.
I
It
told you
wasn't
before.
on science training or anything like that.
I told you before, you know how to sell. So
Oh, thank you.
you are good. You are really
Thank
good.
you. Yeah, but that's I sell what I do, so it's not that hard, you know.
But it
If you
doesn't matter. This is still a skill, you know.
yeah, yeah. All right, guys. So we're continuing the next session from where we stopped, and I'm hoping that all of you have your presentations in front of you, because we will need to write some more on those presentations in this next coming slides. So, in order to have the right way to govern, the right way to direct people on what is right and what is not right to do in security, we said that we need to authenticate the right users. We need to make sure that they fall in the right place, the right procedure to do what they do in the organization, to expose them to the right data, and to have audits and logs and make sure that they do what we intended them to do. And that's all true, that's all correct. And if we had laws or regulations or procedures that are set and carved in stones, our life will be easier. Okay, we will come in as security experts, do our work, you know, set the rules, set the governance, the book of rules of the organization, and once it's set, that's it. No deviation, no anomalies should take place, right? The problem is that organizations don't work this way. Organizations are like a living organism. They keep developing, they keep evolving, okay? They keep changing. And as they change, also their need for security is changed. And we will constantly see the anomalies or exceptions that need to take place in our book of law, in their governance, the security governance. So in order for us to do the right way of changes, we will need those changes to be captured, okay, and follow the right steps. So no deviation from the policies is done unsupervised or in unsupervised manner. So again, in order for us to constantly evolve with the organizational business needs, we will need to set rules for change. Okay, a change is a deviation from the policy. The policy is there, and it's constantly, you know, we all do follow the same rules. We all need to have badges and so on and so forth, and to enter the right rooms and to log in with the password. But from time to time, we'll need to have a change. From time to time, we need to have a deviation in that procedure. And for that, we have the topic that we call change management. So change management, for this, we have three roles, okay? Three roles in the CISSP that are identified as part of the change. The first one is the change requester. The change requester is someone, or someone can be a person, and someone can be a business unit as well, that is requesting for a change in the way we do security with them specifically on this specific topic. So the change requester comes up with a problem, all right? There is a problem, there is some sort of an exception, okay, that they need to take place, that will need to take place in order for them to do their job. So they come to us, or they come to the organization and say, okay, this is a change here, okay, something doesn't work right, or I want to improve something to make it more right or more efficient, so we need a change, okay? There's a reason behind that change, and the change requester will need to provide that reason. The request then goes in front of the change manager. they want to decide, along with the change review board, on how to address that need for a change. That change manager can now prioritize and say to the review board, hey, we have a good direction here on how to improve our security or the process of how we do security in our organization. So instead of everybody going to the same security guard or the same security guard, one security guard at the desk, at the entrance of the building, maybe we can add another security guard, another security post, so they can go to two, and by that make it more efficient and not rely on just one person to approve everybody to enter the building because of fatigue and for all obvious reasons that one security guard can have. So the change manager prioritized the work or the change requests and puts them in front of the review board. Okay, the change manager is also part of the review board. Now the requester put the request in place and they wait for further directions from the review board. Okay, the process of requester that the requester will go through is first the change needs to be identified. The problem needs to be identified. Okay, and then the change requester puts the request. From that point on, the change requester, the request itself, is at the hands of both the manager and the review board. The manager requests the review. The board prioritizes the change itself of all the changes that were presented to them. They evaluate the impact of the change. Okay, they ask for, okay, what will happen if we put 2 security guards? There's going to be a cost. We're going to need more room. We're going to need more another table, another computer for them to log in, another user. There's an impact behind that change that we'll need to consider. And then after considering all this, the review board either approves or rejects the change. If they reject the change, then the change requester can put another request for a slightly different approach for that change. But we basically go back to square one if they reject. Only if they approve, okay, then the requester is now authorized to act on the change. See what we're doing here? We're going back to the requester and holding them accountable. Now you, Mr. Change Requester, are obligated to test the change, bring us the result, work with whoever in the organization to test the change, and report back to us after your implementation, after the implementation of the change. Okay? And again, the change can be requested by an individual or by a business unit or by an executive, but there is an owner for the change request. That owner is not just putting the request there, but it also directed to execute the change. Now, the last part of it is audit. Okay, we always audit at the end of a process. The way the review board audits the change is that they want to get post-implementation reports from the requester, from the owner of the change. Okay, now they want to hear if our analysis of the change and the change impact was actually right. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. Yep. So hang on, just one note. For the CISSP, you will need to remember this sequence. Okay? It's not a whiteboard. I don't want you to just memorize it. I want you to understand it. Okay? So you'll need to understand that there are 2 phases of the requester. Okay? Then the manager gets to do one part. Okay? review the request, and that can be any delegate of the executive of the review board. And then the review board kicks in and they look at the changes, they prioritize them, they analyze the impact and either approve or reject. And then it goes back to that owner to actually execute the change. And then the review board looks at the actual change and compares it to the desired and current state that we are in. They compare the two. Okay, so you will need to remember how the flow works here. Does that make sense? Yeah? All right. Is everybody with us? Jega, Carlo, are you with us? Aaron, you wanted to ask
Yeah,
something?
definitely. I'm listening to you very carefully.
No, I'm not complaining. I'm just making sure you're all with me because this can be tricky.
This is very tricky, always. Depends.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, when you're in question 77 and you're stressed and you paid $700, you don't want to pay it again, you know, this can be tricky to understand. That's why I'm emphasizing the different categories here. Okay, the requester, the manager, the review board, the cycle between them, the fact that the manager has only one role in all these 9 boxes. Okay, in the book, when you read through this through the book and you read this topic, it all looks the same. So I broke it down to 9 boxes here, so you can actually remember it with the animation and all. Aaron, you had a question?
No, I just answered your question. You asked if everything is clear, so I said yep.
Oh, okay. No, because I thought I heard you during my explanation, and I said, you know, we'll give. Hang on a second.
If I will have question, I will raise my hand. It's okay.
All right, great.
Question: do we have to
Yeah.
memorize this slide here?
Come again?
Do we have to memorize this slide here?
So again, I wouldn't recommend that memorizing it, but really understand the process behind it.
Okay.
There's a need for a change. A person, an individual, or a business unit, or an executive comes in and says, this is the change I want to make. Okay, we now have a change board. That change board is represented by the change manager, which brings to the change board all changes. They either approve or reject, and then the change requester, that someone that initiated all this, needs to actually act on this, and then report back, and then they compare. So not memorize the 9 boxes, but more understand the process, okay? I don't want to overload you with things you want to remember, okay? All right. Now, there can be questions on the benefits of change control. And we all understand why the change is important, why the change, the monitored, the controlled change is important. First, we want to have standardization. We want the organization to work according to the set processes that we have in place, you know, and not have these changes everywhere that are not monitored, that are not supervised, that are not approved, and creates this security gaps, security holes along the way. You know, if we don't control the changes, then we risk it at, you know, getting more and more vulnerabilities and kind of chasing our tail in security. So by looking at all these 5 benefits, you can understand that, you know, no matter what we do when we manage our changes, everything that comes out of it is good, is a benefit. Okay, we maintain governance, we maintain standardization, we hold people accountable, we can roll back if needed. If the change is managed and monitored and documented, now we can roll back if something happened, right? If something bad happened. If we patch the system and this was a managed change, we know what the change caused, and now we can roll it back, all right? So we will talk more later on about change management and configuration management. Configuration management comes before change management, but you know, the idea behind change management is all this, okay? Something needs to be changed, and we need to have an owner, an approval process, an execution process, and then report back. Now, the next topic in governance is data classification. And we mentioned that a few times today. So in order for us to govern that area of, when we do authorization, we want to make sure that the subjects have access to the data and information and systems that they need to have access to and they need to be exposed to do their job. How do we know what do they need access to in order for them to do their job? Well, if we just do it, ad hoc, then we cannot achieve the proper security governance. Only if we go through classification process, we can classify the data, we can classify the roles, we can classify the systems, then we can connect between them all and say that this type of role or individual in this role can execute this type of actions on this type of data and get access to these systems because now they're all classified. Classified is giving labels to data, system, and subjects. Labels, okay? And this is really important. With label management, we can do data classification. Now, for classification, we have two disciplines, okay? Two ways to classify our data. And this goes throughout the CISSP. This is something I want you to remember. In the CISSP, we always look at two disciplines. One is the government/military, very strict, very set of rules that are very strict for governance or military, right? And then we have commercial. The difference between the two is that government/military rules are there to protect the nation, okay? So there's a whole meaning behind this, right? And the commercial rules are there to support making money. So sometimes we want to make money on the expense of keeping the right rules in place. But for government and military, it's all a matter of national security because everything is important. So for the data classification under the government/military approach, we look at 5 levels of data classification, from top secret to confidential, sensitive but unclassified, and I'll explain about this shortly, and unclassified. And what I would like you guys to do on the presentations that you have in front of you is I want you to mark a line, a very, very thick line between the first top three, and the lower two. So a line here, okay? And again, going back to the CISSP book, this will not be explained this way, okay? The way they explain it is 5 different levels of data classification. The reason I want you to mark this line between the first 3 and the other 2 is that for you to remember this and for you to understand this is, I want you to understand it this way. Data in the military is always a matter of national security. It can be confidential data, secret data, or top secret data. That's it. Data for the military or government can only be confidential, secret, or top secret. So instead of remembering all 5, I need to remember these 3. Confidential, secret, and top secret. The other 2 are for data that is not classified yet. It's in parking, okay? So maybe you want to write it down next to it. It's in parking, data in parking. We didn't decide yet on how to classify it, on whether to put it under confidential, secret, or top secret. All right? Now, there are differences between SBU, sensitive but unclassified, and just unclassified. Unclassified is all data that comes into the military and is waiting in parking to be classified. SBU is data that I know that came from a sensitive source. So, for example, data that is in the mailbox of a 4-star general, right, is considered SBU, while data from a private mailbox is considered unclassified. Maybe they write something in that email that makes it secret or top secret, okay? This will be analyzed later, but for now, the source of information is the one to dictate whether it's SBU, entry point, SBU, and then, or unclassified. Does that make sense? This is really important. Guys, if you have questions on this, please ask away, because this is, I know it's tricky to understand.
I have a question.
Sure.
That data in parking means that the data is waiting to be classified. This is the definition of data in parking?
Exactly.
Okay.
It can be in parking for 50 years. Okay? It can be in parking for 50 years. But once someone analyzed it and decided how to classify it, can be classified as one of three: confidential, secret, or top secret. And once it's there, it's in that container that will protect it in a confidential manner, or secret manner, or top secret manner. All right? Okay, we good, guys?
Mm-hmm.
All right, this is really important because there are a lot of questions in the CISSP on this. And in order to make it easy for you to remember, I give you the acronym here. USCST, okay? You can choose whatever phrase you want to use, but I use it in the US, so I kind of kiss up to the US audience. Okay? US can't stop terrorism. I really, really hope that they can actually do that. We can actually do that. But unfortunately, still takes place. Okay, we good there? So this is the government and military. Again, the objective behind this, behind the government and military, is national security. Now I take you 100 degrees to the other side, okay?
180.
180 degrees.
Yeah, why not? Absolutely.
No, someone else will say 360 degrees, like a full circle. And I take you to the other side of this, the other side of the moon. Okay? I didn't say darker, I just said the other side of the moon. We had Pink Floyd back then, now we have the dark side of the moon. Now, Valentino can relate to my crazy way of thinking. That's the crazy way of thinking. Now, we're done with national security, okay? The world has not ended. We don't have a nuclear war, all right? It's not World War III. Now we want to maintain the next important thing, which is money. Okay? We want to maintain money. We want to make money. We want to make business run and flow and do what they do to make more and more money, right? So in order for us to make money, we need to change our way of thinking. And when we talk about commercial data classification, here we care about the fast-paced businesses work, okay? It's not a matter of national security. Now it's all about getting bigger and richer, okay? For this part, we again have 3 levels of classification. low, medium, and high. Okay, low, medium, and high. And I use the colors here, and you can mark. I think it's printed in black and white on your end, so just mark them. Okay, 1, 2, and 3. For the high part, the high classification container of data for commercial use, we have 2 classes. One is confidential data, and one is private data. The difference between the two is confidential data is data that belongs to the organization or any organization, okay? Write it down, please, because I want you to remember this. Confidential data under commercial data classification rules belongs to the organization or to any organization, okay? One organization keeps other organizations' information. Private data belongs to individuals, belongs to people. An organization cannot have private data. Do you see what I'm saying? An organization does not have an ID number that is super confidential, does not have social security number. An organization needs to work, and sometimes the organization will hold a database with private data of individuals. But the private data belongs to the individuals. Do you see where we're going with this? Okay? So when we classify data in organizations as highly classified, we say one of two. Either it's highly classified, means confidential data of an organization, or private data of individuals. Now let me ask you a question. Yeah, Aaron, you have a question on this.
Yes, please. As far as I know, social security number is PII, so it's
Right.
private data. It's not confidential.
Right.
It's not company data.
You are so right. And you are right there on that question I wanted to ask. Guys, let me ask you a question. An organization that holds a database with social security numbers of everyone in GCP, okay? How do they classify their information? Obviously, it needs to be classified as high level of classification, right? But is it considered confidential or private data?
It's considered private data, I would say.
I cannot hear you, Valentino.
I would say private data.
Private data.
I
Yeah,
would
because
say
because I can request for them to delete it because it's my data. It's my
Okay.
identification number.
Can you ask for my data to be deleted from them?
No.
Then if we classify this
It's a
as private
confidential.
data, we cannot take action on all the data, only one by
Yes.
one, right?
But
Yes.
it's a collection. It's a collection of private data.
Right. No, okay.
maybe depends of the type of the organization, because for example, if we're talking about Schufa in Germany, actually they do deal with this information, and this is
Okay.
so. And if they don't have this information, Schufa does not exist. You know what I mean? So for them, this could be considered highly confidential data, because it's it's related to the organization and the way how they work.
I think you're drifting away, Carlo, from the example. I wanna go back to you because you were right there, very, very close to touching it.
Okay.
What's your analysis?
To my opinion, it's a private data because it belongs to people, and as a customer, I can ask the company to delete all the data which is related to me, including my social security number from their database. Of course, the database is a collection and it's belongs to the company, but the data inside is belong to privates,
Okay.
private people.
So you are both right and wrong. Okay? How is
Typically
that?
me.
Typically me. I'm just getting to know you, Alan, so I don't know.
You still have a long way to go.
Okay, so if we look at the database that holds all employees' social security numbers, that database as a whole, as a package, is classified as confidential data. It is owned by the organization. Okay, that's the database that the organization created. Each record, and we will meet that again in domain 8 of the CISSP, each record is classified as private data. So the package, the database, is classified as confidential data. Hence, the system that it resides and we put it in the access control and the need to know and the list privileges and all that is when we talk about confidential data of the organization. Another example of confidential data are patents, for example. The company produces something and they register a patent on it. So during the process of patent registration, they keep this information confidential. So the same way they keep that database of social security numbers confidential. But when we manage the records inside of it, now we talk about each record is classified as private data. Does that make sense? And I want you to take a very, very close look. I want you, just a second, just look at this. Look at the small letter that we look, the S at the end of social security numbers. Okay? Do you see that? Social security numbers as plural. Many numbers. This is what ISC is going to toy with in your brain. You see a scenario-based question, and that question speaks about social security numbers, and in your state of mind, you're talking about private information number, but you missed the last S, and it's talking plural. It's talking about database. They will not say it's a database. I'm telling you it's a database. Okay, because you have the S at the end of social security numbers. Does that make sense, guys? Aaron, are you with us? Because I know you have a lot that you kept from saying, so speak up.
I'm with you all the time. Yes, it makes sense.
Okay, great. I don't want you to fall in this area. This is exactly where they put their traps. Social security numbers, database. Okay, social security number is one record. Look for it. Okay, look for these pitfalls. After we classified our data in the organization that is trying to make money, get richer, expand their business, and so on and so forth, we classified that confidential/private data, highly classified data. We now have sensitive data and public data. Sensitive data is generic information about the operation of the organization that needs to be exposed to people from inside the organization. So the differentiator between the two classes, sensitive data, medium, and public data, low, is the audience that it's intended to address. Okay? Sensitive data audience is only people from inside the organization, the business partners and so on. Public data is everyone. Just like back then when we had the everyone option for permission. Sorry, one second, okay? When we had the option to grant permission to domain users versus everyone. Domain users is everyone in the domain, but if you're not in the domain, you're not gonna be granted with permission, right? But if I choose everyone, that means that even if you're not on the domain list, you're granted with permission. So the problem is bigger and the risk is much greater when we talk about public data. Jega, I'm with you now.
In the private data column, we have customer records and personal data records. So if a company holding this personal data records means, then it, according to me, it is a confidential data, right?
Come again with the question, because I didn't realize that.
In the private data column, I
Private
see
data, yep.
yes, I see customer records and personal data records. Okay,
Right.
If some organization hold personal data records of each and every employee, then it belongs to confidential data, right?
Right. Yes. Again, when we talk about one by one records, those are private records. Okay. You need to analyze the question, okay? Because I don't know what type of question it will.
No, the thing is, if it is a personal data record, then it means if it is a singular, it means a private data.
Exactly.
Here it is a plural. Then it should belong to confidential data, right?
Right. No, you're right. It's plural here, but I want you to understand that, you know, it can be customer records, it can be PII, it can be plurals, but considered as individuals. And I emphasize the confidential data with social security numbers, just to give you that example that, you know, when it's a stack, when it's plural, it's going to be there. It's going to be confidential. But you're right, Jiga. Maybe I should edit that slide, and instead of having them plural, having them single.
Okay.
So thank you for this, Jiga. You just helped me improve the next bootcamp.
Thank you.
I give you 3 points in your CISSP exam. That's on me, man. I wish I could do that.
Make me pass domain 3.
Yeah. All right. So thank you, Jacob. Thank you. Thank you for noticing this. All right. And we all
can also,
yep.
You can also put Shufa as an example of such organization.
I'm not familiar with the Shufar. Can you explain more on your WhatsApp group or on chat?
Sure, it was just a joke. No worries.
Shufar is about to die.
The true thing. I have no idea what this guy is talking about.
Shufar is about to die, so don't waste your time.
It's basically a credit rating system.
But none of you guys actually left, so I wasn't sure that. Carlo, maybe you should improve your jokes. I don't know, man.
This is also a possible option.
Right. Okay, guys. So again, government/military, national security, and everything that relates to that. 3 levels, right? And 2 in parking, waiting to be classified. Commercial, we want to make money, we want to grow the business. We have 3 levels as well, 2 for high, and then medium and low, separated by the audience that they're intended to. Okay? Private is only for individuals. Confidential is for organizations. Okay? Remember that organizations are not eligible for privacy protection. Let me say it again. Organizations are not eligible for privacy protection. Privacy protects only individual people. The organization needs to provide privacy protection for the individual. Does that make sense?
No.
GCP as an organization doesn't have the GDPR protection on its information. The GDPR protects us, Shachar, Jega, Aaron, Valentino, Carlo, Ran, okay? It protects the individual. And the GDPR directs GCP to protect your information. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
GCP as a company, as an organization, cannot claim for privacy violation of its own information, only for its employees, the individuals. Okay? Jega, we good? Does this make sense? Organization versus individual? All right?
Yeah.
Okay, good, great. We're making great progress, people, really. I'm really happy with this progress. In order for us to pull out information from those classified areas, let's say something that was top secret. Are you all familiar with Area 51 in the States, in Roswell, right?
Yeah.
New Mexico?
Yeah.
So there are a lot of classified information there, right? Sometimes the government decides to pull out some of the information and make it public. So the process, it's not public, but it turns out to be unclassified because it's the government's information, okay? So they put it in unclassified. They take a top secret and make it unclassified, right? Do you see what I'm saying? You see where I'm going with this? Now, the process is to declassify, so to roll back, and it relates to change management, right? As we classify, we go through the change process. So to roll back, declassify, remove it from the classified area, and then put it in another classification level, all right? That's the process of rolling back, okay? The steps that we have toward classification are these. We have 7 steps toward classification of information. First, we want to identify the custodian. We want to say who's the one to be in charge of this container or containers of classified information. Then we want to set the criteria for how to classify the labeled information, or to label the data and classify it, okay? The rules that we talked about. Then we want to classify that information with the right label, document it, select the security controls, and specify the procedure for declassifying. So when we need to declassify it, we want to be able to go through the procedure. The last one is to create awareness of this set of rules, okay? So first, we need to identify the custodian, whoever is going to handle this classified information, specify the evaluation of criteria, set the labels, classify the information, document, select the controls, and specify the declassification process. At the end of this, we want to create awareness. Okay, and again, this list, you will need to remember what comes before what in your exam. Okay, so this is not as important as the change process, but it might appear in 1 or 2 questions of your exam, okay? So just know that there's a process of this. Try to make sense behind this process, because in the book it's written, again, everything seems important. Kind of hard to separate the important stuff from the less important stuff, but I really try to do that here in your presentations. All right, next topic, and this topic will be, I think, the last one before we take the lunch break at 1 o'clock your time. So let's try to cover this one, and then we can go on a break. So in the ISC, in the world of security of ISC Square, we have 6 roles, okay, 6 primary roles. And the 6 roles are these. We set the roles to create hierarchy, okay? The hierarchy limits the overall risk. What does that mean? Now, I want you to take a look at this slide. And what I want you to do is mark, put a circle around the mid 2, the data owner and data custodian. Okay, circle those 2 together. Okay? Now, the reason I asked you to circle those 2 together is that because data owner and data custodian can never exist in the same person. It's either you're a custodian or you're an owner of data, okay? If you are the owner of data, that means that you are the risk owner. You own the risk, you own the decision of what to do with the risk, you own the data, you own the classification process, you will decide how to classify this information, but once it's done, you pass it on to your custodian. So if you remember, the first step of data classification was to identify your custodians. The custodians are the people that will actually need to operate by the set of rules that we set, okay? We simply, as owners, as data owners, we need to tell them, okay, this is my data, please protect it for me. Okay? So again, owner and custodian can never exist in the same person. It's either this or that. The rest of the all other four roles.
Can you give a concrete example for it?
Yeah, I will in a second. Okay.
Okay.
Think of CIO and CISO, for that matter. Okay.
Okay.
All other four roles can exist in either data owner or data custodian. Okay. So data owner can be a CISO. Here's my example. The CISO is the owner of the cybersecurity strategy, right? That guy, Shachar, the CISO, sat with management and built this strategy, and now he has the strategy set for GCP. Perfect. He creates this file that is now stored on the organization's systems, in the organization systems. Okay? Shachar is the owner of that file, of the strategy. If he decides to publish this online, that's his decision. He's the data owner, hence he is the risk owner. And he can be also a security professional, senior manager, a user, and can probably audit whatever the CIO or the IT department is doing. Make sense, Shachar?
Yeah.
The CIO, okay, for that matter, is now the custodian of Shachar's cybersecurity strategy.
Mm-hmm.
This guy is directed by Shachar on how to maintain security of his file. Okay, once it's done, once it's classified, he will need to provide the container and make sure the whole operation around it works perfectly to provide Shachar the safety and security that he required as the data owner. Now the CIO is again can also be a security professional, but for that matter, he's not dealing with security. He's the CIO. Executive, absolutely. User, yes. Auditor of something else, of his third parties, yes, can be, but never exist in the same role. So when you see CISSP questions that will try to confuse you, owner and custodian in the same entity, this cannot exist, okay? Always try to find the two parties here, okay? The data owner, hence risk owner, hence decision maker, okay? And the custodian, the one that acts according to the decision maker's decisions or directions, okay? Does that all make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So the roles can be changed according to who owns the data. Okay.
Yes.
So also the CIO can be the data owner, and the CISO can be the custodian.
Exactly.
Okay.
The CIO itself can be the data owner, and now he has different custodians.
So the data owner, he let's say decides who will be the custodian based on his role.
Either he can decide or the organization can decide for him.
It's not the data owner is the
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Right. What the owner decides on is the data itself and the risk that comes out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. All right. This one can be very, very tricky in the CISSP, and this one we see a lot of questions around that. A lot of questions from students, people that are facing this in the questions and don't fully understand what is what. It's called the due care and due diligence. I'll try to make it easy for you to remember, but you guys need to, try to find a way to fully understand this because it's not just to remember. Okay, I don't want you to waste your memory on this. This can be easily understandable if you follow the right process. So, due care and due diligence. I want you to think, when you hear the word due, think of the word duty, okay? The duty to care, the duty to be diligent. The duty to care is for everyone in the organization. Everybody needs to care about security, okay? The duty to be diligent is for senior management, executive management. Yes, we all want to be diligent. We all want to be thorough with what we do. But the duty to be diligent in our organization is on the table of executive management, senior management. And what we refer to here is, the example I can give you is the ISO 27001 audit, or any ISO audit, okay? Are you familiar with the ISO 27001?
Yeah.
Sorry, any ISO audit, okay? Any ISO audit you can think of takes place once a year, right? Once a year, the auditor comes in and they run the audit 2-3 days. They check this, they check that, they look for evidence, and they grant us with a certification. Or they say, okay, you didn't pass the audit, let's meet again in a couple of months, and then we'll rerun the audit, okay? But it's a single event throughout the year. That event requires us to be diligent, to provide the right attestation and evidence and audit logs and whatever the auditor is looking for, but to pass that single event in a single point in time. However, throughout the year, the whole year, our organization still needs to act securely. We are doing information security awareness training to all employees. We make sure that access is granted on a need-to-know and least privileges basis, right? So we do everything throughout the year to maintain security. That's our duty to care. And the duty to be diligent is a single event, single point in time, okay, that we need to be diligent. The way I want you to remember this, if you cannot fully understand what is written here, or you find it hard to remember it throughout your exam practice, I want you to remember the DC and DD. Okay? DC stands for do correct. Okay, do the correct thing. And the DD is the do detect. So you detect once, and then you do the correct thing throughout the year. All right? Is this clear to everybody? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Cool. All right, let's cover the next topic, and then we can go for our lunch break. This one, again, for security governance, we need to put in place a security structure of controls, okay? We talk about the risk, and we will break down the risk later on. Hopefully tomorrow morning. I think it will be tomorrow morning, maybe today. Maybe we can complete that today as well, but we'll see about that. So the controls can be technical, physical, and administrative controls. Administrative controls are the base of controls that are written controls, either written or verbal controls. We call them soft controls, okay? Directive controls simply direct us on how to do the right things in security. Directive controls can be a written policy, right? Information security policy. It's a great policy. And part of our policy, for example, in GCP, is that we do not use thumb drives anywhere in the organization. I don't know if it's true or not, but maybe the policy says that. Now, you take the policy and you break it down to the how, and now you move to standards and baselines and guidelines and procedures and so on and so forth. But basically, the control itself, the directive control, cannot enforce anything. It simply directs. Okay? So when you look at controls, you look at the description of control, ask yourself, does it have teeth? Is it strong enough to enforce what it says, to enforce its objective? The objective of a firewall is to keep public from private. Does a firewall have the ability to enforce that objective? Of course, using technology with the right configuration, right? A policy says no thumb drive in the organization. The fact that I have a written policy, does it have a way to enforce its objective? Absolutely not, right? It can be written, but can be overridden by users. They can ignore it, right? So if the control doesn't have the teeth to enforce its objective, then it's a soft control. It's a directive control. It's an administrative controls, okay? It can, in your CISSP, it can be all three: administrative, directive, soft control. Those are all the same names, okay? And if we look at the structure of soft controls in governance, we can see the policy is at the top of the pyramid here, okay? This is a broad security statement of what we want to achieve in security. And then from it, there are derivative other soft controls. First one is standards. Do we need hardware or specific hardware or software to bring this policy to life? Maybe the answer is yes, maybe the answer is wrong. If the answer is yes, then we want to have a standard for the hardware or software or both that we will need to bring this policy to life. And then for baselines, we ask, what is the start point? Our policy is to have everyone be able to work remotely. However, in order to work remotely from home, this is the spec, the minimum spec that you will need to have in place in order for us to approve you the remote access. You will need to have a separate Wi-Fi network, SSID, for work and for the house. This is the minimum. This is the baseline. Okay? If you have three, I'm good with that, but at least you need a separation. Okay? And you cannot use specific hardware below that specific hardware that we want. This will be our standard. And then the guidelines are basically a recommendation on how to do. When you do this, pay attention that it's recommended to have a strong password on your access point at home before you connect to work. It's recommended. Since we're opening a VPN tunnel between your home and work, your admin password is not that important because we have enough controls in place, okay? And then the procedures takes back the policy. So draw an arrow from policy all the way up to, from procedure, sorry, all the way up to policy. Draw an arrow, okay? That takes you from procedure, it takes you all the way up to policy. The procedure is the day-to-day, step-by-step explanation of the policy. And to bring this to more light, to make this more visual for you with the example, this is an example. For example, here we have a factory that handles wood. Let's look at the policy. It's the boards of wood. Sorry about that. Kind of lost my English for a second. So the policy says employees will nail boards together using a company-issued hammer. That's the policy. That's what we're here to do. That's the objective. And then the standard, okay, the hardware/software says company-issued hammers. Say what they're doing here. They're saying with what? What tools do we use to follow this policy? The company-issued hammers will be 11 inches long and made of fiberglass. Okay, so this is the requirement for the hardware. And then the guideline says if you want to avoid, you don't have to, but if you want to avoid splitting wood, a pilot hole should be drilled before hammering, and then the wood will not be split. If you don't have to work by that. It's a guideline. Those experienced people work accordingly. And then the procedure says 1, position nail vertical to the board. 2, strike nail with full swing of hammer. And 3, repeat until the nail is even with the board. If, that's 4, if your thumb is caught between a nail and hammer, C, thumb first aid procedure. That's another procedure that we have. Okay?
What is the baseline here?
Haha, that's my question to you. Shachar, you thought I missed that, and I always look for that victim to tell me, hey, you missed that part. Good. Now this is your question. What is the baseline? We cannot hear you, Valentino.
To wear protective gear at all times.
The baseline is that the employee will go through a training how to
Nice.
how to nail a hammer.
How to nail the board, right?
Nail the board, sorry.
So the question here is, where is the start point? Where do we begin? What is the minimum requirement that we start with? Perfectly said, Shachar. The minimum training an employee needs to take in order for him or her to work in our factory is this. Okay, that's the training. All right? All right, guys. We will reconvene here talking about threat modeling and all that and risk management. We will reconvene here in an hour. This will be 2 o'clock your time. All right?
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Enjoy lunch.
Later.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.